Have you ever noticed that the more you insist, the more it seems that everything slips through your hands? However, when you withdraw, as in a calculated movement, the world begins to tilt towards you again. This is not magic, nor is it an emotional game. It is psychology and, above all, stoic wisdom in action. The real power is not in controlling others, but in dominating oneself. The Stoic does not shy away from emotion, but neither is he a slave to it. He understands that excessive attachment generates dependence, and that withdrawal, when done consciously, brings clarity. Anxious insistence conveys need, and necessity almost always repels. As he moves away firmly, the man communicates, even in silence, "I am enough. I don't run after what doesn't walk by my side." Many confuse distancing with coldness, but the difference is in the purpose. Stoic distancing is not punishment, it is preservation. It is the pause that allows emotions to settle in, illusions to dissipate, and reality to reveal itself. While the emotional reacts, the rational observes. And in this space of observation, true presence is born. The paradox is clear. What moves away with value leaves a void that echoes. This echo makes more noise than any word spoken in despair. When you disappear with purpose, absence gains weight. Not because you wanted to cause pain, but because you chose to prioritize yourself. And that, in the world of relationships, is revolutionary. The woman feels this energetic cut. She realizes that something has changed, even without explanations. The man who was once predictable and available has now become an enigma. And the mystery is the fertile soil where desire grows. What is easily achieved is rarely valued. What requires perception and depth marks. Stoicism teaches us that true strength is not displayed, but felt. The man who walks away with conscience does not close doors. He just lets the other person decide whether they are worth going through. And it is in this choice that genuine interest is born. Silence, when used wisely, speaks louder than 1,000 words. It is not an empty silence of those who do not know what to say, but a silence full of presence of those who do not need to explain themselves. The Stoic man understands that his strength lies precisely in what he chooses not to reveal. In a world where everyone screams to be noticed, those who are conscientiously silent stand out. Strategic silence is not the absence of opinion, it is absolute presence. It is the deliberate choice not to react to everything, not to try to convince, not to seek validation in every gesture. This type of presence impacts without invading. When a man decides to shut up, he creates space. And in this space, curiosity grows. The other person's mind begins to fill that silence with questions, assumptions, and fantasies. This is natural human. The absence of response creates tension, and emotional tension, when well handled, is the trigger of interest. The Stoic does not use silence as a way to manipulate, but as a means of maintaining his integrity. He knows that not every feeling needs to be transformed into speech. There is wisdom in observing before acting, to reflect before exposing yourself, and above all, in preserving your energy for what really matters. Women notice this kind of silence. They sense when a man is not trying to sell himself, justify himself, or please himself. His silence communicates that he is centered, that he has a rich inner life, and that he does not need external validation to feel complete. That's emotional power, so never underestimate silence. In the hands of a conscious man, he is not empty, he is pure presence. It is a silent declaration that you are at peace with yourself. And that peace, my friend, is irresistible. Few realize it, but the real impact does not come from insistence, but from the absence of a well-positioned person. The Stoic understands that detachment is not indifference, it's strength. It is the ability to walk without having to be pulled, to leave without wanting to hurt, to leave with dignity. When you withdraw from someone's life, not as a punishment but as a conscious choice, you deliver a clear message. I respect myself enough not to beg for space where there is no reciprocity. This distancing, far from being an end, is the beginning of a new perception. Absence creates an echo. It is felt. And if you are present in an authentic way, this emptiness you leave is not just anything. It weighs, it invites reflection. People begin to remember not only what you said, but the energy you carried. And this energy, when it disappears, is missed. Detachment is a stoic virtue because it sets us free. He shows that someone's worth lies not in how much they beg for attention, but in how much they can stay true to themselves, even when the world offers no answers. The detached man does not run away from connections, but does not cling to them at any cost. Women feel when a man is not in prison, when he can walk away, and walk away in peace. And paradoxically, this makes it more present, because your presence is no longer an obligation, but a choice. And choices have more weight than obligations. Absenting yourself may be the most powerful gesture you will ever make, because it is in the space that you let that the other understands who you were. And it is in this space that desire, if it is real, flourishes. Indifference is not coldness. At least not when we talk about the Stoic version of this concept. Controlled indifference is, in fact, mastery over one's emotions. It is the ability to not allow the other to determine your internal state. It is the mastery over oneself in the face of external chaos. The man who masters this art conveys something rare, emotional autonomy. He's not shaken by the absence of answers. He does not panic in the face of the silence of others. He does not change his value because someone has stopped recognizing him. This is not arrogance. It's balance. This posture, as calm as it is, creates a subtle tension. The woman realizes that she is not in control, and this, far from alienating, attracts. Because mystery is born of what is not fully accessible. And desire, in turn, grows where there is uncertainty. The energy of controlled indifference is not aggressive. It is serene. It is a no said softly. It is a yes that does not come easy. It is the constant message that you are okay with yourself and that no one can occupy a place. That you yourself have already filled within yourself. Stoicism teaches us that we shouldn't be emotionally dependent on what's out of our control. And that includes how others treat us, whether they respond or not, whether they care or not. True peace is in knowing that regardless, you remain whole. Therefore, if you want to be wanted, first learn to suffice yourself. The strongest presence is the one that does not force, and the most magnetic energy is the one that is at peace with its own silence. There is something unforgettable about a man who does not need to prove himself. He enters an environment and does not try to dominate. He relates and does not try to justify himself. He exists naturally because he is already at peace with who he is. And this serenity becomes a magnet. The needy man is anxious, predictable. He constantly seeks signs, answers, validations. And for this very reason, it is easily forgotten. Not because it's bad, but because its energy doesn't make an impact. It leaves no room for mystery, and without mystery there is no curiosity. Without curiosity there is no connection. The centered man, on the other hand, is not trying to convince anyone. It is enough. He positions himself without aggressiveness and withdraws without resentment. His absence weighs because his presence was real, and everything that is real leaves a mark. Stoicism cultivates this kind of presence. The idea that you shouldn't get lost trying to be what others expect, but rather to live according to its principles, its mission, its truth. And that's precisely what makes it memorable. Women, even if they don't know how to express it, feel it. They remember that man who did not give in to need, who didn't beg for attention, who didn't lose himself trying to keep someone. And in his silence they find something rare, self-respect. In the end, the most remembered man is not the most romantic nor the most eloquent. It is the most authentic. And authenticity is not forced, it is lived. While many try to impress with grandiose words and attitudes, the real impact comes from something more subtle: calmness. A man with a quiet mind and a firm heart conveys security, not because he is the strongest physically, but because he is the most emotionally stable. This serenity is a silent form of leadership. Stoicism teaches that we should not allow external circumstances to dictate our inner state. In other words, you don't have to be cold, but rather unshakable. This does not mean not feeling, but rather not letting yourself be dominated by what you feel. And this quiet strength is perceived by everyone around him. In a relationship, this calm presence stands out. She realizes that you don't change for a little thing, that you don't have to rush to solve everything, that you are comfortable in your own skin. This builds trust, and trust is the soil where true desire flourishes. Men who do not have control over their emotions act on impulse. They react too quickly, speak without thinking, create conflicts out of insecurity. But the Stoic man observes, analyzes, waits for the right moment. He does not act to prove. He acts because he has decided, and that clarity is magnetic. When you are at peace, you transmit peace. And peace, contrary to what many think, is not monotonous. It is profoundly seductive because it offers what is rare in an anxious world: stability. Being with someone who is unfazed by anything is like finding shelter in the midst of a storm. So if you want to truly conquer, start by calming your mind. Strengthen your heart, because the man who dominates himself is the one who, even in silence, commands everything around him. Sometimes the biggest mistake a man makes is not what he does, but what he gives, giving too much too soon to those who did nothing for it. At first it may seem like generosity, but over time, this delivery without criteria turns into noise, and what should attract starts to repel. The Stoic understands that everything in life has a weight, including your attention. When you offer everything right away, time, affection, presence, without knowing if there is reciprocity, you take away the value of those offers. It's as if he said, "I don't need to be chosen, I offer myself anyway." And this communicates need. Women realize this. Even if unconsciously, they sense when a man is trying to buy their interest with excessive attention. And what is bought is rarely respected. Because respect is born of balance, not urgency. Generosity is a virtue, but when it turns into self-effacement, it loses its value. The Stoic man does not stop giving. He only selects who deserves to receive. He watches before turning himself in. He wonders, does this person show the same level of interest? Or am I trying to fill a void? Giving without criteria is not love, it is escape. It is an unconscious attempt to be accepted, to prove value. But true value does not need to be proven, it is felt. And for it to be felt, there needs to be scarcity. What is too abundant loses its luster, so don't be afraid to hold your energy. Offer yourself only to those who show that you deserve it. Because when you value yourself, the world starts to see you with different eyes. Have you ever noticed how urgency drives you away? Like that anxiety for an answer, for a sign, for attention. Does it always seem to generate the opposite effect? This happens because the need, no matter how silent it is, has a smell. And the emotional sense of smell is keen, especially the female one. Stoic man does not live for the sake of return. He offers presence, but he doesn't demand anything. His urgency is not there because he already feels complete. It does not seek to be validated. He is so firm in his mission that there is no room left to run after what does not contribute to his peace. When you act with necessity, you transmit instability, and emotional instability is not attractive. The woman feels that she has become the center of her life, and not because of her worth, but because of the lack of balance in you. This overwhelms her, and desire in this scenario dissolves. Stoicism preaches internal control as the key to freedom. This means understanding that you don't need anyone to feel enough. The other can add yes, but never be the determining factor of your well-being. When you internalize this, something changes in your posture, and this change is noticed. Urgency kills mystery. It takes away the necessary space for the other to desire, think, miss it. When everything is immediate, predictable, and insistent, there is no room for what if. And the what if is the cradle of interest. Otherwise, you become just another one who is always there. Be firm, be patient, Learn to live with silence. Because those who have mastery over their need earn not only respect, but genuine desire. You are treated as you teach others to treat you. And this teaching is not done with words, but with attitudes. When you prioritize yourself, when you make it clear, without having to say it, that your peace comes first, the world adjusts, and respect is born. The man who forgets himself to please others ends up creating the illusion that he is being kind. But little by little, this kindness turns into submission. And where there is emotional submission, respect weakens. The Stoic knows this. He takes a firm stand and never abandons his axis. Self-worth is not arrogance. It's balance. It is knowing how to say no without guilt, leaving without drama, silencing without fear. It is to be clear that your time, your energy, and your attention are precious, and that not everyone deserves this access. Women respect men who respect themselves. Even if at first they don't understand the more selective posture, over time, this firmness turns into admiration, because it is rare to find someone who puts themselves first without having to humiliate anyone for it. The Stoic lives on principle, and one of the most important is never abandon yourself to keep someone close, because if you have to get lost to have company, that company isn't worth the price. And respect is born exactly the opposite, from being whole. Therefore, if you want to be valued, value yourself. Don't give in for fear of losing, because what is worthwhile never demands its annulment. And those who see you choosing yourself learn to choose you too. Ignoring is not childishness. It's not a tantrum. Ignoring with intent is one of the most powerful tools of the Stoic man. Not because it creates distance, but because it commands respect. It's a pause that invites reflection, a silence that requires emotional maturity. The emotionally mature man knows when to shut up. He does not get into unnecessary disputes. He does not respond to provocations. He observes. And when he feels that his presence is being underestimated, he withdraws, not to hurt, but to preserve. This withdrawal is a silent declaration of self-worth. Women feel when this silence comes from the right place. If it is theatrical, manipulative, it loses its impact. But if it's real, coming from a centered man, it weighs heavily, because it communicates something that doesn't need to be shouted. I choose peace. Ignoring with intent is not about provoking lack. It's about maintaining integrity. It's knowing that you don't have to be present at all times, respond to everything, always please. Its absence can be as eloquent as its presence. When done consciously, the Stoic acts on the basis of reason, not impulse. And because of this, his silence has meaning. He does not need to explain his absence, because your life is already filled with purpose. And those who live with purpose do not need to beg for attention. Finally, understand, it is not about ignoring out of pride, but for clarity. The man who knows when to shut up is always one step ahead, because the real impact is not in the scream. It is in the serenity of those who have already understood their own value. In today's fast-paced world, reacting has become instinct. Someone doesn't answer. You charge. Does anyone disappear? You go after it. But the Stoic man acts differently. He's not hostage to impulse. He observes. And this quiet, analytical, silent posture, that's what makes him magnetic. When you react without thinking, you give away your power. You make it clear that the other has control over your emotions. The man who observes, on the other hand, demonstrates dominance. He lets silence work for him. He understands that not everything requires a response. Not everything needs to be solved now. Sometimes time is the best argument. The woman feels it. She notices when you are present but not dependent, when you're attentive but not anxious. His calmness generates questions in her mind. Why doesn't he react? Why is he so good with all this? And these questions are the beginning of real interest. Self-control is one of the most powerful virtues of Stoicism. He does not annul the feeling, he polishes it. The centered man is not cold. He feels it, but feel it clearly. He acts with conscience. He chooses the right moment to speak, to act, to take a stand. And that conveys wisdom. To be predictable is to be forgettable. The man who always reacts in the same way loses the surprise factor. The Stoic, on the other hand, surprises by his constancy. His serenity is disconcerting. The absence of despair is seductive. His stance is firm, even when the world tries to get him off track. Instead of chasing attention, be the man who attracts by steadfastness. What dominates the impulse dominates the situation, and those who dominate themselves inevitably become irresistible. There is a kind of presence that comforts, but also instigates. The Stoic man is that kind of presence, firm, approachable, but never obvious. He appears when it makes sense, speaks when he has something to say, and disappears when he needs to strengthen himself. This creates the perfect balance between closeness and mystery. Being too predictable kills desire. When everything is delivered easily, the other stops wondering. And desire needs unanswered questions. It's born of uncertainty, of surprise, of possibility. The man who is always there, likewise, loses his luster with time. It becomes part of the scenery and no longer the focus of attention. Stoicism teaches that you must be present with purpose. It's not about quantity, it's about intensity. It is to be whole when you are, but without fear of leaving when necessary. This shows independence. And independence, for those who understand its value, is an aphrodisiac. Being present without being predictable means having a life of its own. It means that you have your routine, your goals, your mission, that the relationship is part of your life, not the center of it. This prevents you from being mistaken for someone who needs attention all the time to feel important. Women admire men like that. Men who don't need to be glued all the time, but who, when they appear, score. Men who don't say yes to everything, but who make every yes count. Men who leave without drama and return with even more presence. Be the one she can't fully decipher, which is whole but not deliverable. That offers presence but preserves its essence. Because in this balance lies the true desire. True seduction does not come from appearance. It comes from the posture, the way you stand before the world. And this posture is directly linked to your ability to master your emotions. The Stoic man knows that it is not what he feels that defines him. It is what he does with what he feels. Having emotions is not weakness. The problem is being governed by them. The Stoic feels everything but bows down to nothing. He may be saddened, but he does not surrender. You can fall in love, but you don't get lost. His firmness does not take him away from the connection. It only prevents him from annulling himself by it. This ability to remain firm, even in emotional moments, is what makes the man remarkable. He doesn't explode, he doesn't freak out, he doesn't beg. He maintains. Its energy conveys control, and that, in a world of impulsive reactions, is like a beacon in the fog. Women feel safe next to someone who governs themselves. Someone who doesn't change his mood according to her approval. Someone who doesn't lose focus because they didn't receive an immediate response. This stability is not apathy, it is emotional strength. Stoicism teaches you don't control what others do, but you control their response. And this lesson is gold in relationships. Because when you respond calmly, even in the face of contempt, doubt, or provocation, you show that you have more control over yourself than anyone else has over you. The posture of the Stoic man does not need to shout to be noticed. It is felt. It is that presence that does not ask for permission, but does not invade either. It just exists, firmly, clearly, with dignity. Have you ever stopped to observe who remains when you stop giving so much? When do you withdraw a little, not out of pride, but for preservation? Absence has this power. It reveals. It shows who really cares and who was only there because it was easy. The Stoic man understands that his energy is a valuable resource and that he should not offer it without criteria. When he walks away, he's saying, now it's your turn to move. And if there is no movement on the other side, the answer is given. No drama, no insistence. This absence is a silent test. She does not demand but observes. Those who really miss you will speak up. Those who have just gotten used to its presence will disappear into silence. And this filter is liberating, because it clearly shows where it is worth investing. Stoicism teaches healthy detachment. The idea that you can walk away and stay in one piece, that you can love but not get lost, that you can desire someone but not need them to continue your journey. This kind of strength turns any absence into an opportunity for clarity. Women feel this change. They realize when your absence is not a tantrum, but wisdom. And this perception moves them, because for the first time, it's not you who is trying to prove something. It is you who is watching. And that completely changes the dynamic. Absence with purpose is like a mirror. It shows the other the real dimension you occupied. And if there is truth, it manifests itself. If not, you go on in peace, because above all, you chose yourself. Being remembered has nothing to do with insistence. It has to do with essence, with the way you live, position yourself, respect yourself. The man who lives with purpose does not need to chase attention. He naturally attracts, because his presence carries weight. Its absence, too. The Stoic lives with intention. Every step, every word, every silence has meaning. He is not adrift. He doesn't live to please. He lives to fulfill his mission. And this clarity means that even when it disappears, its energy remains. Women don't remember those who begged. They remember those who scored, of those who did not get lost, of those who maintained their posture even when the connection seemed threatened. This is being unforgettable, maintaining dignity until the end, even when the other does not recognize. The secret is in the construction of your own life. When you are so focused on growing, evolving, and living with truth, you become a reference, not because it is perfect, but because it is authentic. And authenticity in times of lack and despair is gold. You don't have to insist to get noticed. You just need to be true to yourself. That is enough to score. The man who respects himself, who lives with purpose, is remembered even when he disappears, because the echo of his presence was real. So if you want to be unforgettable, don't force presence. Build a life so rich, so intense, so true. May even your silence speak for you.